So look, you're here because you like getting hands-on and building stuff. And that's why I'm here too. And I got good news for both of us. That's what we're doing right now, today. We're going to be building our first OpenAI Agents SDK project, building a sales development rep. And we're going to be building really three different pieces. We're going to be building three different layers of agentic architecture while we do this. We're going to be starting with something quite simple, a workflow of agent calls. We're then going to spice it up by adding an agent that can use a tool. Remembering back to when we did this the sort of manual way with the JSON, with the boilerplate in week 1. And then we're going to have agents that can call on other agents. And you're going to discover there are two different ways of doing this. You can treat agents as tools, or you can use the thing called handoffs that I mentioned before. So keep this in mind. Keep this construct in mind. This is how we'll be approaching it. There's a lot of coding to do. Let's get started. And so here we are back in Cursor, ready for the day to begin. We open the OpenAI folder. We go to lab 2. Here we are at the start of week 2, lab 2, day 2. We're going to do an agent workflow. We're going to use tools to call functions, and then we're going to collaborate with tools and handoffs. So before we start, we're going to be making use of a tool. It's called SendGrid, and it will allow you to send transactional emails from their servers. It is free, so it's going to be very easy to set up. It's actually owned by Twilio, so it's a very well-known company. It's similar to something like SparkPost if you've used that before, and of course you can use SparkPost instead if you'd prefer. So there's a link here. If you visit SendGrid right there, up it will come, and you can start for free by pressing this button right here. And once you do that and you've set up an account, I will switch to another window. Here we go. This is what I get once I've signed in. You can see that I've sent 1 or 2 emails, and there's just a few things for you to do once you've done this. You go to the settings menu down here and to the API keys section. That is where you will set up an API key and copy it to your clipboard. You can guess where that's going to go in just a second. The other thing to do is to go to this tab here, Sender Authentication. And you're going to click this Verify a Single Sender button. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow you to set up your own email address. This is my email address right here, and do like a verify email to confirm that you do own that email. And once you've done that, you'll be able to send emails from that email address. So that's a nice thing to do, just so that you'll be able to send emails via SendGrid from that email address. But don't worry, we're not actually going to be sending any cold emails out to the world. It will only be emails going back to you again. This would just be experimental, but you can always use it for more purposes in the future. So that is SendGrid. Please go ahead and get that set up. And shockingly, I'm sure you expected this. Once you've done that, you'll then edit your .env file over there, and you will add in a single row, SendGrid API key equals, and of course you will paste in there the thing that you've copied from the API keys section. You created a key there in SendGrid itself. All right, so go ahead and do that, and then we will proceed. Okay, and so now we have some imports. We're going to be doing some usual stuff. We've got a few more from agents. We're also importing this thing called function tool. We're importing something to help us stream back text, and we're importing some SendGrid stuff. We're going to load our environment variables as usual. And now let's do a simple workflow between agents without anything fancy here. We're just going to have some agents calling other agents, and we're going to orchestrate it manually ourselves in Python code, and it's going to be super simple. So first of all, 3 instructions. And these instructions, again, think of it in the back of your mind, these are basically system prompts, but they are the way that we are framing different agents. All 3 are about being sales agents working for a company that I'm calling Comply, AI. Oh, the wonderful naming. This is a SOC 2 compliance company that is looking at helping company prepare for SOC 2 audits. So something to do with compliance, if you're not familiar with this stuff. But yeah, it's a SaaS tool that will ensure SOC 2 compliance. So it's saying you're a sales agent working for this company. You write professional, serious, cold emails. It's like a cold sales email, email to get people interested. The second one is a humorous, engaging sales agent. You write witty, engaging cold emails that are likely to get a response. And the third one is you're a busy sales agent and you write concise, to the point, cold emails. So as you know from good prompting, you use a system prompt instructions to set the context, to give the tone, to sort of set the mood and the character and give as much background information as you can in a succinct, instructive way. Okay, so now we create 3 agents, Sales Agent 1, 2, and 3. And this should be very simple. It should make complete sense to you. Each agent gets given a different name. They have the 3 instructions, the 3 system prompts, and we're going to be using GPT-4o Mini throughout. Keep it cheap. We've just created those 3 agents. All right, and now we're just going to start with the first one. And I just wanted to show you a different way. You remember we had runner.run before. Well, now I'm calling runner.run streamed, which is a way that you can do it that will allow us to stream back results. You may be familiar with streaming from simpler OpenAI examples, but this is how you can do it with the Agents SDK. So you may spot that there's no await word there, which may set off alarm bells, because that means that what we're getting here is not a response. We're getting a coroutine. And you can see what happens next. We use a special construct, async for, a special way of then calling this in a way that will return a coroutine, and we will then iterate through those answers. And this is just a little bit of boilerplate code to make sure that what's coming back is some text that we can print. And if we get that, then we print it. And this just stops it printing on a separate line every time. So if I run this, it's just very similar to what we did last time, but you'll see that what comes back streams back bit by bit. And it's a very nice use of the streaming APIs. And I show it to you so you have an example of how to do this. And of course, just as you would expect, we see a great behavior from our agent. This is the professional one, I think, and we can see that it's come back with something nice and professional, nice and slick to simplify your SOC 2 compliance efforts. And it's no surprise to everyone that's worked with LLMs for a bit that they are really good at this kind of thing. They can write great, professional, realistic, reasonable sales outreach emails. So far, so good. Pressing on. So what we're now going to do is call this, it looks like I'm going to need to import asyncio there. Hang on, let's do that. Missed an import at the start. Actually, let's do this properly. I'm going to take this out just so that it's nice and clean for you. I'm going to put that async import right up at the top there and rerun that cell. I like to do my imports at the top. I know people have different views on this stuff. Okay, so we are now going to say we want to write a cold sales email. That's going to be our instruction. And what we're going to do now is we're going to call this asyncio.gather. Do you remember this? I showed this to you back when we had the asyncio briefing, that this is where you start to see the power of asyncio. We're going to be running 3 different runs at the same time. And of course, again, it's not multi-threading. It's not like the CPU is actually time slicing between them in some ways. But rather it's going to be using an event loop, which will run each one. And whenever it's pausing, waiting on IO, it will let another one run. And because most of what these things are doing is pausing on IO, that will allow all 3 of them to sort of alternate and be talking to an LLM, to OpenAI in parallel. And then we will collect back the results. What comes back from this await gather is a collection of results, and we will call final output on each one and print it. So we will let that run. And you can see that I've wrapped all of this in a trace, which means that we should see all of this in one trace. We will do in a little bit. But no surprise, hopefully what you'll see down here is I have to click here to get a scrollable element, and you'll see that we can scroll through and read a bunch of emails. And the third one, of course, is very concise because we asked our third email writer to be concise. Okay, so far all we've really done is multiple calls to LLMs. And now the final piece of the puzzle, this is just a simple workflow of different calling LLMs. See if you can remember which one of the agentic patterns this is, but it's a sort of variety of one of them. And we are going to create a new agent called Sales Picker. And Sales Picker picks the best cold sales email from the given options. Imagine you're a customer, pick the one you're most likely to respond to. Don't give an explanation, reply with the email you select only. It's a classic kind of prompting. You know that you often end with the constraint, with any limitation is a good way to end a system prompt. All right, so that's the message, the user prompt, writer called sales email. We have this same construct. We're going to run 3 agents in parallel to craft 3 messages. We're going to gather the outputs, and then we just simply call another agent. So this is just Python code, step by step, call 3 agents in parallel, take the output, call another agent. It's just a Python script that runs these things in order, and it will then print the best email at the end of it. And because we've got the whole thing under one trace, we hope to see all of this in a single trace. So this is probably going to take, I think, like 30 seconds in total. So I'll have to keep the sentence running if we want to see this live. And at the end of it, we'll be able to go into the trace while it is run. So here is a single email that's been returned, and it is apparently the best one. But let's now go and have a look at the trace to see if we believe it. Okay, so this was our email. Now this is a link to go to see the traces in OpenAI. Here it comes. So at the top trace is selection from salespeople. Let's go and have a look into this trace. What you'll see is that, sure enough, it called the professional sales agent. And you can read the actual prompts that went in. It called the engaging sales agent. It called the busy sales agent. And then it called the sales picker. And you can go through this in the trace and see what's going on. So it's worth pointing out that we've really not done anything very magical so far. It's nice, it's elegant that we've had these wrappers, these agent constructs around things, but they're very lightweight wrappers. We've essentially simply called a total of 4 LLMs. We've called the 3 sales LLMs, and then we've called the one at the end to pick the email it preferred. And it's sort of elegant that you can go into the traces and see what's going on. But now it's time to get a bit more agentic and start talking about tools. So as we get into tools, let me remind you, have a think back to what we did in week 1 when we had to build some boilerplate JSON to describe a function that we wanted to use as like a tool. It's quite chunky JSON that described the parameters and various other things about it. And then we had to write a function called handle tool calls, which is the one that had the hokey if statement that I then tried to write into something a bit more fancy, but which was still a fair amount of sort of gunk, to use a technical word. And what we're now going to see is how that whole stuff can be super simplified without taking any flexibility away from us. So first of all, we're just going to recap. We've got these 3 sales agents, the professional, the engaging, and the busy ones. And there they are. And let me just look at one of these sales agents. So if I look into it, you can see that it's got a name, it's got the instructions, and you can see that it has things like tool choice, tools, and it has like a list of tools that it has access to, which right now is empty. So just to give you a sense of what's going on under the covers, it's perfectly simple, but these are the constructs we're working with. So what we're now going to do is have a tool. So this is a function, send email. It takes an email body, which is a string, and it has a doc string, send out an email with the given body to all sales prospects. Now, what I've got in here is the from email, and this email needs to be what's called the verified sender, the email address that you've set up in SendGrid that you're allowed to send from. Otherwise, it won't actually send. So you'll need to update this. And then to email, you should put that to be an email where you don't mind it receiving an email. I would prefer that you change it from my Gmail here. Otherwise, I will get flooded with emails from people doing this. So maybe I'll change it before I commit this to GitHub. But yes, send that to another of your email addresses, or you could probably just send it to yourself. I'm not sure. But send it to somewhere where you don't mind receiving cold sales emails. There'll only be 1 or 2. We're not going to send a mass of them. And then this is SendGrid's API. It's perfectly simple. It's sendgrid.client.mail.send.post, and you give it a body. So you can look through this, but it's honestly, it's just a boilerplate to send an email to a recipient, and we respond with success. So this is very much like the tools that we wrote last time, it's like a function to do it. And if you remember, the next step was to write a ton of JSON to describe this. But all we need to do with OpenAI is put one of these decorators above it at function tool. If you're not sure how decorators work, again, that's in the guides, or just ask ChatGPT to explain it. But that allows OpenAI to write some code to sort of do something with this function. But all we need to care about is we simply put that decorator above the function that we want to treat as a tool. And so we will just simply define that function. Doesn't look like we've done anything, but let's look at this thing called send email now. We think it's a function, right? But no, it's not a function. Because we have this decorator, it's been converted into something called a function tool. It has a name, send email. It has a description, and that description is taken from the docstring comment we had right here. Look at that. It's just turned that into a tool, a description. And then, and this is the great stuff, params JSON schema. This stuff is all of the boilerplatey JSON that we had to write last time. It's just done it for us because it's read this and it's figured out what's needed. And that's basically it. So just by simply adding that decorator function tool, all of the work of faffing around with these JSON's objects has been taken away from us, which is great. That's what a good framework should do. Take out the boilerplate, but leave us in full control. Okay, now there's something a bit confusing now, which you'll have to get your head around, which is that you can, as we've just done, turn a function into a tool. There's something else you can turn into a tool as well. You can turn a whole agent into a tool. You could say, we've got this sales agent, something that can write a sales email. Well, that whole thing, that whole process of calling that LLM with that prompt, that can just be considered itself to be a tool. We could think of it as a sales agent tool. And doing that might sound like there's a fair amount of work to be done to package an LLM call into a tool. But no, all you have to do is call as tool on the agent, and you will convert the agent into a tool. What does it mean to convert an agent into a tool? All it means is it's going to create a new tool. It's going to have all of the JSON gunk that describes what that tool can do. And if that tool is called, it's going to actually call the agent and make the agent make the call to the LLM. So it's a wrapper around the agent that turns the agent into a tool. That's all it is. So let's look at this. Sales Agent 1 as tool. We're going to give it a tool name, Sales Agent 1 still, and write a cold sales email is our description of what that tool can do. And now if we look at tool 1, you can see it's a function tool, just like this one, just like send email. It's got a different name. Its description is this description here now. It's got the same like parameters, the JSON blob that we would expect. And it's got a special function to tell it what to do when the tool is actually called. And that, of course, is actually going to call our agent. So hopefully that makes sense. We're now going to package our agents into tools and use them. All right, here we go. So this, I could have done this with a fancy loop, but I thought, you know what? I'll just spell it out so that you're crystal clear on what's happening here. We're going to have 3 tools, tool 1, tool 2, and tool 3. And it is just taking the 3 agents, sales agent 1, 2, and 3, and calling as tool on each of them. And for each one, we just give it a tool name and a tool description, which is the same tool description. That is it. Now, if you feel up to it, just rewrite that as a nice little loop so that we don't have silliness with repetition like this, but I wanted to spell it out. And now I'm giving myself a list called tools, and tools has tool 1, tool 2, tool 3, and these are the agents wrapped as tools. They're tools that would simply call the agents. And then send email is the real tool. That is just a function, send email, that calls SendGrid, the email program. And let's have a look at what we get if we run this. So now this is our list of tools, and it is indeed 4 function tools: Sales Agent 1, Sales Agent 2, Sales Agent 3, and Send Email, all in a list of tools. Okay, now it's time to put all of that into a sales manager, our planning agent. So now it's a bit like we did before, except we're giving an agent the ability to choose what to run when. It's not like we're just writing Python code to say, do this, 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 and then send email. But rather, we're letting the agent decide. You are a sales manager working for Comply. You use the tools given to you to generate cold sales emails. You never generate sales emails yourself. You always use the tools. You try all 3 tools once before choosing the best. You pick the single best email and use the send email tool to send the best email and only the best email to the user. Now, I'm probably overspelling it out here. You can experiment. It's not always required to be so pedantic, but I'm also doing it to show you what's going on. And it's never a bad thing to be very precise and instructive with your prompts. Okay, so with that, we want to create a new sales manager agent. There it is. We want to give it these instructions, its system prompt. We want to pass in all 4 tools, all these tools right here, and we give it a model. And then we say, send a cold sales email addressed to Dear CEO. And we start this going, and off it runs. And this will take about 30 seconds. So I will see you in a sec. Well, actually, it didn't take 30 seconds. It took 18 seconds. It was quite quick, and it finished. And we can first, let's look in my email. I did, in fact, just receive an email, and here it is. And very good. It does indeed do things quite nicely. You'll see it's put like a template, CEO's name, not Dear CEO. You can improve the prompting to stop it doing that if you wish. But there's an exercise at the end to incorporate mail merge, so it actually would put in real people's names here. But very nice. We got the email. It came through to me, and it came from the verified email sender as expected. The other thing to do, of course, is to go and have a look at the trace. Let's go and do that now. So here it is. Sales Manager is what we called it. 4 tools were used. It took 18 seconds. Let's go in and have a look. So it called Sales Agent 1, it called Sales Agent 2, Sales Agent 3, and then it called Send Email. That's the tool that is just a tool. If you look at each of these sales agents tools representing by this sort of green thing, you'll see that underneath that was an agent. So this hopefully makes it crystal clear for you that we had an agent, the professional sales agent, that was wrapped in the tool Sales Agent 1. And you can see that again for this one and for this one. But in the case of send email, it was simply a function that was called with a body. But you can look through the trace, and you should look through the trace and understand the interactions between tools and agents to allow the sales manager to carry out its full activity, allowing itself to make its decisions about what it does in what order. Okay, now to recap, what have we done? We first just used agents to write Python code so that agents could run. We sort of sneakily used the async gather so that we could run multiple in parallel. And then we used another agent afterwards to pick the best email. That was simple. We then use tools to wrap a function so that we could have an agent that calls a function. And we also used the as tool construct so that we could wrap other agents to be a tool. And we provided all of those tools to our sales manager agent, and we let it call 3 different email producers and then finally send the email at the end. So that's hopefully connecting for you, making a lot of sense. There is one more construct that is in some ways really similar. So it's a bit confusing, but there is a distinction, and it's called a handoff. A handoff is something that you can give an agent. An agent has a number of tools and a number of handoffs. And handoffs are other agents that it can delegate to. So in many ways, that sounds really similar to taking an agent and wrapping it as a tool. An agent as tool is very similar to a handoff. There's a kind of conceptual difference and a very practical difference. The conceptual difference is that you can sort of think of it like there's an agent which either has just the ability to use tools as part of doing its job, or handoff is when it's delegating, it's sort of giving responsibility and ownership of a specialist task to another agent. So sort of philosophically, it's a bit of a different mindset. It's not just using this as a little feature, a little tool to help with its job. It's passing an entire job to another agent. But there's a more sort of fundamental, simple, technical difference between them, which is that when you're using tools, you can think of that more as a request response. You're calling the tool and control passes back to you, and you continue as the main agent executing. In the case of handoffs, you've done your piece and you are now passing control to the other agent, and the flow does not come back to you again. It's just a passing of control, delegation of control to a different agent. So that's the difference between agents as tools and handoffs, and it's you can use either in different situations, but they are slightly different constructs. So I explained that a little bit here. And now we're going to make a new agent that eventually is going to be a handoff. So here's the deal. We are going to start by saying that I want a subject writer agent, something that is able to construct a subject for a given email body, because I don't know if you noticed, but we didn't have subjects on those emails. So we're saying you can write subject for a cold sales email. When you're given a message, you need to write a subject for an email that's likely to get a response. So that's one instructions. Another instructions is going to be that you can convert a text email to an HTML email, a formatted email, which is how most emails get sent these days, particularly the fancy sales emails. So you will be given a text email body, might have some markdown because LLMs often put markdown in these things, and you need to convert it to an HTML email with simple, clear, compelling layout and design. So we're then going to make an agent for the subject writer with those instructions, and we're going to use the as tool approach. This time we're going to make this a tool because it sounds like a tool, right? It's just a tool to write a subject. So we're going to have a tool, and that tool is going to be wrapped around this agent. Similarly, for the HTML converter, we're going to say, okay, so you're something which is able to write HTML emails. We're going to make you a tool. We're going to turn you into a tool, an HTML tool that's able to do that. All right, let's say, oops, what have I done? I'm in cursor land, undo that. All right, run that, great. Okay, and then we're gonna have one more tool, which is rather similar to the prior send email, but I've made this a send HTML email, and it takes a subject and a body, and it sends out an email with the given subject and body to all sales prospects. Again, remember to change this to your verified email sender. Make this some other email than mine, please. And then send using SendGrid. And you can see there's just a tiny change here that it sends it as an HTML email, not a text email. Okay, so then we now have three tools: subject, HTML tool, and so a subject tool that creates a subject, an HTML tool that converts a text email to HTML, and the send tool. So two of these are agents, and one of them, let's print them. Let's have a look. Tools. Two of them, they're all function tools. Two of them are actual agents wrapped, and one of them is just a function. Okay, we're almost there, almost there. So now we're going to create a separate agent, and this is going to be the agent that we're going to want to hand off to, if you're wondering where this is all heading. So this agent says you are an email formatter and sender. You receive the body of an email. You first use the subject writer tool, then the HTML converter tool, and finally you send the email. So we call this emailer agent. It has a name, it has instructions, it has tools, it has something new in here. Handoff description. Convert an email to HTML and send it. Now this is how this agent will sort of announce itself to the world in case another agent wants to use it. If there's another agent that might want to do something, this is how it knows whether or not the emailer agent is an agent that might be useful. So that's a sort of framing. It's very similar to the tool description. It's a description of what this agent does. Okay, so if you've been following me, you will now be clear that we have three tools. These are the three sales agents, and we have a handoff. We have this thing, this agent, which we can hand over control to. And somewhat confusingly, this handoff itself has 3 tools: subject writer, HTML converter, and a send HTML email. You following this? If not, come back, go through it. Or of course, print. It's always good to print. We should print tools and we should print handoffs and take a look at what we've got. So this is the tools are just the sales email, sales agent 1, 2, and 3. And the handoffs is a single agent called the email manager. And this agent, we should see itself will have a bunch of tools. It has a handoff description. It doesn't have any handoffs itself, but somewhere in here we should find that it has a few tools. Here they are: tools, function tool name, subject writer, and so on. All right, if any of that's not clear, come back, look through this, print it, get a sense of it, and then we will actually run this. Okay, moment of truth. I'm going to run it, and while it's running, I will talk through what it's doing. Hang on, off it goes. So we have a new sales manager. We say, you are the sales manager working for Comply. You use the tools given to you to generate cold sales emails. Never generate one yourself, always use the tools. You try all 3 sales email tools at least once before choosing the best one. You can use all the tools multiple times if you're not satisfied with the results from the first try. You select the single best email using your own judgment of which email will be most effective. And then after picking it, you hand off to the email manager agent to format and send the email. Now, again, I'm really spelling it out here, and you shouldn't need to be that prescriptive because the handoff description was there, but it helps to be precise. And particularly as these things get more complex, if you want it to stay on track and to be reliable, then this is a good practice to do. So then we create the agent. It's a sales manager. We give it these instructions. We pass in both the tools and the handoffs. This is the crux of this. This is how we separate out the tools, which is where it's like a request response, from the handoffs, which is a delegation. Control is passed across to take care of the rest of the work. And that is our message. And we put a trace around it, automated SDR, and we give it a run, and it took about a minute. And let's see what came back. This is the result, and it's picked a very short one in the end. You remember one of them is a very concise email writer. It does indeed begin, "Dear CEO," and it ends "Alice," as we asked for. And it's given a nice, short, sharp, AI-driven solutions that can optimize your business processes. And so it's nice and crisp. There we go. And importantly, we now have to go and look at the trace. So the trace, here it is, automated SDR. You can see how long it took. It used 9 tools. Let's go and have a look. So it came in and it used Sales Agent 1 and 2 and 3. And then look at what happened. It went back and used Sales 1, 2, and 3 a second time. Load more. And then this was the handoff. You can see here shown. Then it goes to the email manager, and then that goes to the subject writer, followed by the converter, followed by the send email. And you'll see that control does not then come back. So you're seeing everything in action here. The sales manager that's able to handle things, and it hands off here, and the email manager takes the rest of control for the rest of this blue timeline that you see highlighted in here. You can see the multiple calls to different agents, and the handoff and the use of tools, both wrapping agents and just directly calling functions. And that is a satisfying conclusion to quite an interesting example of agentic workflows and design patterns. Okay, well, we covered a few of the constructs and concepts with OpenAI Agents SDK, including tools and handoffs. And the most important thing that I want you to take on board is that it was simple. It's relatively lightweight. We achieved something quite complex, quite advanced, and we did it all in a matter of a few minutes. Now, some exercises for you, as of course very important that you now come back and spend some time on this yourself. That is the best way to learn. So first of all, go through and identify the agentic design patterns that we used here. Now, there was a moment in this when we moved from doing what Anthropic would just describe as agent workflows to something that was really like agentic agents under their definition, although I think it's a little bit hand wavy, but still, there was a clear moment. Can you identify it? Can you spot what was the change, the small change that made that difference? And then try adding in more tools and more agents. This is a great way. This is so easy to extend this. Obviously, calling this an SDR was maybe a bit of a stretch because it's really just a cold email writer, but it would be very easy to see how you could build this into something that's much more interactive. And then a hard challenge for you, particularly if you've got some engineering experience, figure out if you could turn this into something which is more of a longer living agent workflow, in that someone could reply to that email and the agent would then be able to pick up and continue the conversation, have an email-based conversation about the company. Now, the hard part about that is handling replies back from SendGrid that will need you to do a little bit of research and understanding about things like webhooks and how that will work and how you'd use that to trigger this processing and how would you identify who you sent it to. So there's a fair amount of stuff in there, but it's engineering stuff rather than much agentic stuff. So you could be forgiven for skipping it if it doesn't appeal to you. But if it does, then that's a very interesting framework to put in place. And in terms of commercial applications, because you remember, I do always like to try and bring this back to how can you apply this to business? And hopefully, I mean, obviously, there's the fact that it could be literally a sales automation tool that could just be working to generate a bunch of different cold sales emails or email campaigns. And if you were to do this extra hard project, it could in fact be something that engages and continues the conversation. And generally, the point here is that you can really apply this to any end-to-end automation of these kinds of business processes. You can think of how you can apply this in this context of sales, but you can think of applying it to so many contexts. Imagine my day job at Nebula that involves recruitment. Imagine how applicable something like this is to that space as well, and many others. Think of a business area, think of the kinds of activities that are done at scale with things like cold sales outreach, and picture how this kind of approach, agents collaborating with a level of autonomy and with use of tools and handoffs, can automate a complex business process. And if you're able to build that more interactive challenge of a sales outreach agent that can take responses, I would love to see it. There's a community contributions folder in week 2. Be sure to put your code in there, submit a PR. There are instructions on the class resources, and use that as a way to share what you're doing with me and with other students. And remember as well the great trick of post it on LinkedIn, tag me, and then I can weigh in and give some thoughts on it. And that helps amplify the work you're doing and make sure that people get to see all of the ways that you are applying agentic AI to business problems. All right. So congrats on getting through a fun project and learning about OpenAI Agents SDK. Next time, I hate to beat this one to death, but I want to go through one more time about the sort of tools and agents discussion. And I want to talk about guardrails, which are a super important way of putting controls around what you're doing. And then we'll be embarking on the larger project. See you next time.